Let me repeat verse 19. The disciples were behind closed doors, meaning they were locked down because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities. And of course, we are afraid of the coronavirus. This verse truly stood out for me and allowed me to look at the text from our present reality. Because on January of this year, World Health Organization declared a new coronavirus disease, COVID-19, to be a public health emergency in the international level. A global pandemic. That was January. This is April now. Some of the news says about 185 countries and territories have been affected by this virus. There are now over 2.1 million people affected. And so far, globally, 141,000 deaths. We also learned that this virus does not discriminate. It has no political affiliation, no class affiliation, no religious affiliation. Even the most powerful political figure like Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of England, he was affected. We read about public health workers being affected, police officers, firefighters, ordained clergies of various religious traditions, and unfortunately, many have died. No matter what politicians say or don't say, fear is real. Fear is legitimate. People, all of us, we are scared. Lockdown, under closed doors, is not a political move, nor was a political move for the disciples. It is not about political score points, but a strategic move to save lives, to stop the spread of virus. I read in the Pew Research that 9 out of 10 U.S. adults expressed that personal habits have changed by this coronavirus. About 44% say their lives has changed in a very major way. Only about 12% say their lives has stayed the same. From the same research, about 91% of adults say they are not comfortable going to a restaurant to eat. And 77% say they would not eat at restaurant. Human fears are legitimate. Fear. Fear is part of our DNA. It is our natural way of responding to a situation that is beyond our control. In fact, dictionary defines fear as distressing emotion aroused by impending danger, evil, pain, whether the threat is real or imagined. So what we are feeling and experiencing is real. But we also agree, or we can agree, that unchecked fear will lead us to some dark places. And possibly heightened fear may lead us to anxiety and even depression. Or some may choose to medicate and suppress their fears with drugs and alcohol and project their anger on others and become headmongers. These are all possible scenarios before us. Yes, fear can shut us down. It can lock us down. It can chain us for the rest of our life. We may not end up in the county jail or a state prison, but may end up in jail in our mind and in our hearts. Therefore, how disciples reacted in our text and how they behaved was a defensive mechanism because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities. They were trying to save their lives as well. They were hunkering down to cope with their traumatic experiences in the last several days. Maybe they gathered to lend one another their shoulders to cry, or to hold each other's hands in solidarity. Lee Grice wrote a beautiful commentary on this passage, so let me read that for you. Fear shut them out, and anxiety locked them up. A few years ago, W.H. Auden wrote a poem about modern life and called it The Age of Anxiety. That poem's name stuck. It soon became a byword for our modern times, the age of anxiety. Because it is so true. Ours is a world that is anxious and afraid. Older people are afraid their health will fail them and their savings will run out. Younger people are afraid that they don't have any savings for old age and they could care less about health. Some fear the future and others dread the past. College students are afraid They won't get a job when they get out. And parents are afraid they'll never get out. Middle-agers wonder if their lives have amounted to anything. And young people wonder if there's anything to strive for anyhow. And all of us live in an age of terrorism and random violence. On a personal note, we fear sickness and the gnawing concern that as we get older, our bodies will give out. We fear disease that have no cure and cures that will have no effect. There are those who fear the new and others who dread the old. Some long to return to the past, and others struggle to be free from it. But this is nothing compared to what disciples faced. Before their Easter morning. Their lives in ruins. For 3 years, they had devoted their lives to Jesus. They had left their home, their family, their jobs, and their security, just to follow him. They had seen him do wonders and cure the sick, raise the dead, and proclaimed the love of God. And what did it get him? A death on the cross. The worst of their fear had come true, and now they found themselves caught in a whirlpool of anxiety. He was dead. Their leader, their teacher, their rabbi, their Lord. They were left with only a nightmare of memories. A Passover meal that had become a nightmare with the revelation that one of their own would betray him. There was the dreamlike time in the Garden of Gethsemane that ended when the high priest's soldiers came with weapons to arrest him. Even Peter, the boldest of them all, even Peter's brave vows of loyalty were followed with words of denial. The mocking, the beating, the horror of his death had left the disciples are shell-shocked, frightened, disbelieving bunch whose worst fears seemed reality now. Then suddenly, according to our text, Jesus appeared before them. There was no knocking at the door that they so feared. Not with a plea to be let in or request that they open the door for him. No, Jesus just came in to hold them together, to unlock their fear, and simply said to them, "Peace be with you." Not only once, but 3 different times, Jesus emphasized to them God's peace. I would imagine those words had a very soothing effect in them, just like drinking ice cold water on a humid day. Wow. The familiar voice of Jesus comforted their weary souls. Jesus renewed their spirit. Jesus infused power upon them. Times such as this, although we are not comfortable, this virus has pushed us to reckon with God, and God has become our source of strength. And faith has given us hope. I read USC Annenberg School of Journalism Professor Winston say these words: "Coronavirus is going to be the religion story of our lives. Deep question about morality, mortality, and metaphysics are going to be a part of every story on this pandemic. Who lives? Who dies? Who get a ventilator? These are religious questions and ethical questions. We make moral decisions every time we walk out of our house now. It is no wonder Pew Research said, in a group, they found 6 out of 10 people now attending religious services, either online or television. They are paying attention. They are seeking God for comfort and for strength. They are finding release. There are souls, broken souls, that has been captive, has been released, finding great hope in God. Sisters and brothers, time such as this is not to turn away from God, but to draw closer unto God, to renew our faith commitment to God, and to be real. Because only God's peace can heal our fearful spirit. May God be our strength. Amen.